Did you know that Max Verstappen's victory in Baku wasn't just another triumph, but a sign that Red Bull has risen from the ashes? What seemed like the end of his reign ended up becoming a strategic coup that puts him back in the championship fight. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, do you think Verstappen can still snatch the title from Piastri this year? The big question is, what did Red Bull discover in its car that has completely changed Max's future? Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. To understand the magnitude of what happened in Baku with Max Verstappen, you first have to consider the scenario Red Bull was experiencing in this 2025 season. For 4 years, they had been the team to beat, with an almost absolute dominance that made Verstappen a 4-time world champion. However, at the beginning of this year, that supremacy seemed to have completely crumbled. McLaren, with Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, had become the new dominant force, while Ferrari and Mercedes also remained ahead at most circuits. The performance gap was so evident that many in the paddock considered the Red Bull era over and prematurely wrote the epitaph for Verstappen's aspirations for a 5th consecutive title. Against this backdrop of doubt and questioning, Verstappen arrived at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with a massive gap in the championship. 104 points separated him from leader Oscar Piastri. For any other driver, that gap would have been practically insurmountable. But the surprising thing is that, far from showing signs of giving up, the Dutchman appeared with renewed determination and with a car that suddenly seemed to have found solutions where before there had only been problems. What no one expected was that this race would mark the beginning of a possible rebirth for Red Bull, a turning point that rekindled the excitement about the championship when everything seemed decided. The most striking aspect of this context is that Red Bull was not only up against its rivals on the track, but also against itself, struggling to rediscover the technical identity that had allowed it to dominate in previous years. Doubts about its ability to react were growing, and the pressure on Laurent Mekies, the new team leader, increased with each failed weekend. However, the restructuring work and the new approach of listening directly to Verstappen began to bear fruit. Azerbaijan was confirmation that history was not yet written, and that the fight for the championship could take an unexpected turn in the final stretch of the season. In the days leading up to and following the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, the Formula One paddock was awash with rumors and commentary about what was happening within Red Bull. There was talk that the team had introduced a package of updates at Monza that, quietly, completely transformed the RB21. The key element of this change was a new floor design, with modifications to the fencing, edges, and the way airflow was channeled under the car. According to sources close to the team, these improvements not only solved the car's aerodynamic balance issues but also gave Verstappen back the confidence to exploit his aggressive driving style. What began as simple technical comments became a central theme. Red Bull had managed to revive a car that many had already given up for lost. Adding to this conversation were unofficial statements from engineers and technical observers who claimed that the new aerodynamic package had the ability to reduce the chronic understeer that plagued the RB21. There was also speculation that the team had found a secret formula to work more flexibly with the wings, designing specific configurations for low-load circuits like Monza and Baku. This move raised even more eyebrows in the paddock, as Red Bull had previously avoided such experiments. Rumors began to grow, insinuating that what seemed like a one-off adjustment was actually the beginning of a new philosophy within the team. Another strong conversation was about a change in strategic decision-making. Under Laurent Mekies' leadership, Red Bull began to give greater weight to Verstappen's on-track sensations over simulation data, something that surprised many in the paddock. The idea that the team was breaking with its traditional methods fueled suspicions that this was the key to the recovery. There were plenty of voices claiming that Verstappen, more than ever, was acting as the team's true conductor, and that his instructions had been decisive in shaping the setup that led to success in Azerbaijan. Red Bull is going through a decisive moment in its recent history. After months of criticism aimed directly at the team's loss of direction, the team appears to have found new life under the leadership of Laurent Mekies. Verstappen's victory in Baku not only restored the team's prestige, but also reinforced the team's belief that they still have the weapons to compete with McLaren and Ferrari. Mekies himself acknowledged that in this new phase, they have opted for a more open strategy, in which the driver's on-track sensations are considered as important as the simulation data. This change in philosophy is a clear statement, Red Bull no longer wants to be a prisoner of the technical rigidity that conditioned it at the start of the season. Max Verstappen, for his part, appears more cautious than ever in his public statements, but his body language on and off the track reveals a different reality. The Dutchman knows that the 69-point gap over Piastri remains a monumental challenge, but he's also aware that 2 consecutive wins have altered the championship landscape. His maturity shines through in every word. He doesn't promise impossible comebacks, but makes it clear that he will fight every race as if it were the last. This stance not only inspires confidence in his team, but also sends a direct message to his rivals. Red Bull is not defeated, and Verstappen remains an adversary who can never give up. The reaction from Red Bull's entourage has also been significant. Helmut Marko, always direct, hinted that McLaren is beginning to show signs of nervousness now that Verstappen is back in the fray. Red Bull's psychological strategy of making its rivals feel the constant pressure is gaining strength again. Internally, the team has coalesced around its star driver, working with a synchronicity that seemed to have been lost months ago. The feeling in Milton Keynes is that there is still time to change the narrative of this season, and that belief in itself is a powerful driver to sustain the momentum of the upcoming races. Red Bull and Verstappen's position, therefore, is a delicate balance between prudence and ambition. There is no room for error, but there is a conviction that with each solid weekend they can get closer to the lead. Verstappen knows that it doesn't depend solely on his talent, but also on McLaren making mistakes, and that's why his approach is more calculated than ever. Red Bull, aware of this, is willing to take strategic and technical risks that previously seemed unthinkable. The big question is whether this audacity will be enough to transform a championship that seemed lost into one of the most spectacular comebacks in modern Formula One history. If Red Bull and Verstappen's resurgence in Baku isn't a mirage, but the start of a real trend, the championship could experience a radical shift. Formula One has always been marked by psychological inertia. When a driver and his team find the right formula, confidence increases, and the rest of the field begins to feel the pressure. A Verstappen in top form, and with a competitive car, not only scores points, but also undermines the morale of his rivals. McLaren, which until a few weeks ago saw itself with an almost insurmountable lead, now knows that every mistake can be punished in the harshest possible way. The safety margin they had is beginning to vanish, opening the door to a much more unpredictable championship. The consequences also extend to the strategic level within Red Bull. A competitive Verstappen forces the team to be more aggressive in the upcoming races. This means we'll see risky setups, tactical decisions that previously would have seemed too extreme, and a greater willingness to experiment in the middle of the season. The mentality changes completely. Instead of accepting a transition year, the team feels it can fight, and that conviction drives it to redouble its efforts. In this context, every qualifying session and every decision in the pits become critical moments where the smallest detail can alter the course of the championship. Another aspect to consider is the media and political impact within the paddock. Formula One thrives on spectacle and narratives, and Verstappen's return to the direct fight revitalizes global interest in the season. Red Bull sponsors regain confidence, and the media speak of an unexpected rebirth. Finally, the most significant consequence is Verstappen's sporting legacy. If he manages to keep the fight alive until the end, even if he doesn't win the title, this rebirth will be remembered as one of the great comebacks of his career. But if he manages to overturn such a large deficit, it would be one of the most impressive feats in modern Formula One history. A change of scenery would not only affect the points table, but would also redefine how Verstappen is perceived in Red Bull's place in the current era of the sport. Max Verstappen's victory in Baku wasn't just another triumph in his extensive trophy case, but a resounding declaration that Red Bull still has much to say this season. What seemed like a campaign doomed to resignation has transformed into a narrative of rebirth, where the combination of talent, strategy, and courage has returned the team to the center of the conversation. Every lap led in Azerbaijan, every risky decision that paid off, and every technical adjustment that restored confidence are signs that the championship still holds unexpected twists and turns. That's the real impact, reminding everyone that you can never write off a champion. Beyond the points or the overall standings, what this moment makes clear is Verstappen's ability to reinvent himself under pressure. His way of facing adversity with composure and discipline positions him not only as a dominant driver, but as a leader capable of changing the psychology of an entire championship. If Red Bull's resurgence is confirmed, we're looking at one of the most exciting stories Formula One has seen in recent years, where perseverance and ambition can change everything even when the odds seem unfavorable. Now the inevitable question falls to you. Do you think Verstappen can complete this historic comeback and fight until the final race for the title, or do you think McLaren and Piastri will maintain their lead until the end? Leave your opinion in the comments, because your perspective is also part of this debate that is gripping the entire world. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.